Deborah Harris, Sarah Iannarone, did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay, Iannarone, Jesse Sponberg, Ted Wheeler, and Biddy Dixon. We will start with the opening statements at 1 minute each, and Jules Bailey, you are first.
I'm going to stand up here because apparently you guys started sharp at 3. I apologize for watching a little bit late, but I can't quite see everybody in this seat, so I want to stand so I can see everybody. I'm Jules Bailey. Perhaps the seating challenge is up here in the back, so it's problematic. The fact is we just don't have enough space for everybody in Portland right now. We have a housing market that is out of control. And I'm running for mayor in part because I believe the city is at a transition point. We don't have enough affordable units that are available for working families. And so we need to protect the people that are in rental housing right now. We need greater rental protections. We also need to ensure that we have more supply coming online. And we're building the kind of workforce housing that is affordable to working families, building into our neighborhoods the kinds of duplexes, triplexes, starter home apartments, and affordable housing measures that will actually support the working Portland going forward. I've been proud to work with Oregon Opportunity Network and others on this going forward. I serve on the Home for Everyone committee. I was even awarded a Housing Champion Award for my work with Oregon Opportunity Network. But I want to work with all of you to get it done. Thank you.
We will now hear from Sean Davis.
I can't see everybody, so I'm just going to go ahead and start from here. So I'll be the first one to say it, rent control. I think we need rent control. I know that we passed the State Bill 1533 allowing inclusionary zoning, and that could be another tool as well. We also need to be hearing from our neighborhoods and our communities to give them a voice, what type of development we're going to be doing. We have to develop, we're going to grow, but how we do it should be dictated by the people who live in the communities. And that's why I'm running for mayor.
I will stand just because I'm Deborah Harris. I am going to be the next mayor. And my purpose for reason for being in this race is because for me it's not a race, it's a journey. There's a destination. I know where it is I want to go. I know how to get there because I listen to you. Housing is a major issue, and it didn't just become an issue. My concern is that year after year, election after election, mayor after mayor, we've been told the same thing, and we haven't seen any results. As far as the housing situation, I want to have an analysis showing where spaces are located. There are spaces that are located there. And then we're going to look at those spaces located. Then we're going to become involved more in the community. We need to listen to, we have 95 cities within the community. Neighborhoods. We need to listen to those voices of those who live in the communities, and then we respond from there. We don't wait until they become a crisis. We should have been doing something. Thank you.
We will now hear from Sarah Iannarone.
We have more mics today. Can you hear me in the back? Is that all right? Okay, I'll just speak up. Thank you. Yes, my name is Sarah Iannarone. I'm running for mayor of Portland right now because, like everyone here, I understand that we're experiencing dramatic and rapid growth that's changing the face of our city, and much of what's happening will be beyond our control as citizens and residents of this city if we're not careful and clear about the direction we want our future to take. Will it be an equitable future where every Portlander has access to the amenities, to the neighborhoods, to the parks and green spaces that we all love? Or will people continue to be displaced, not have access to transportation systems, affordable housing, good paying jobs? The reason that I'm running for mayor right now is because I have the right skill set to get us through at this time. My background is in city planning, so I understand what cities go through as they grow. But I'm also a small business owner. I've opened a business in outer Southeast Portland where my employees take home a living wage and can afford to work in the neighborhood where they live. This is what we're talking about all over Portland. I've done it. I can help us do it across this city. I also understand the transportation investments that we're going to need, and I'll explain more as we go through this forum today. Thank you.
Jesse Sponberg.
Excellent. I hope you guys can hear me. First of all, I want you to know I will not be drinking this Nestle water I was given. There you go, Ted. I will be drinking locally bottled and produced Visa, though. I'm not going to come up here and tell you all my big policy talk or what I promise to do when I get on the other side of that door. But I will tell you this. I have a long history of being a Portlander that fights not just for my politics, but with my physical body for the marginalized and the voiceless people in Portland. And I think you guys should all know my money is not dirty. You don't have to question what kind of involvement is behind the scenes of my campaign, because you guys are the people behind the scenes of my campaign. And I got a lot of fire in me today, but I'm going to try to keep it as mellow as I can. I'm here in this election to protect the interests of the longtime residents who don't get cost of living improvements and they still get their rent up. People who have retirement accounts, people who've worked their whole lives, were now sleeping in a tent because their rent went up. The people that have $2,000 in their pocket and can't find a place to sleep. I'll tell you more.
Ted Wheeler.
Good afternoon, my name's Ted Wheeler. I want to be your next mayor. I currently serve as your state treasurer. Before that, I served as the chair of Multnomah County. The next mayor is going to be managing an important transition for this city. There are hundreds of thousands of more people that are expected to move here. The question is, where will they all live? Where will they work? Where will their kids go to school? With all those people and no new roads or highways being created, how are we all going to get around? Today we're going to focus on homeless and housing. There are policies and programs that the city currently is engaged in that could be improved that increase the supply. There's things we can also do to support people's wages. The bottom line is we need to keep people in housing. We need to create more housing for the people that are coming here, and it needs to be affordable to the people based on the wages we can earn here in the city of Portland.
Ben Dixon.
Hey guys, first of all, I want to thank everybody for being here. This is one of the most important issues, and it's really great to see a large turnout of diverse group of people. I like to see young people and old people talk about the same issues. I'm running for mayor to give a voice to the cultural identity of Portland, and the way that I'm doing that, the way that I'm making that commitment is through the way that I'm financing my campaign. I think that it's the most solid way that a politician can promise to actually represent the communities that they're running to represent. And the way that I'm doing that specifically is limiting all of my contributions to human beings and limiting those amounts to the $50 that Oregonians have access to through the Oregon Political Tax Credit. As far as housing goes, I was the first candidate to announce that they would support inclusionary zoning, whether or not the state got behind it. I think that it's protected under the Fair Housing Act, and I think that our city needs to protect our citizens based on that act. We will get into all of this stuff. I also, as far as homelessness goes, I was the first to support dedicated city-funded transitional housing, and I'll leave it there for now, but I can't wait to hear everything from everybody, and thanks again.
We can give them a round of applause. So this time we are going to delve into the questions. Again, we want to push candidates past the high-level talking points to the details and specifics. The sponsors of this event are on the front lines every day, directly in the community to provide services and housing. We know the reality and complexities beyond the sound bites and the rhetoric. And please hear this loud and clear, candidates, as we delve into this. Whoever is elected, we will hold you accountable. I just want to go over a few of the ground rules. Again, we are all responsible for creating a safe space to think, agree, and respectfully disagree. Please refrain from shouting or booing. Be respectful. We also are asking that if you indicate support or disagreement while the candidates are speaking, please utilize nonverbal cues like twinkle fingers, thumbs up, thumbs down, or what have you. And please hold applause till the end. And of course, please refrain from personal attacks or threats, as they will not be tolerated under any circumstances. Again, this is a space to be solution-oriented to address a very real concern Portland households are facing. And if anybody is engaged in such, we will no longer call on you to answer questions if it's one of the candidates, and we will ask you to leave if you're in the audience. All right, let's start first with homelessness. The first question talks about funding for solutions to homelessness. This year, many agencies supporting people to end their homelessness ran out of funding for rent assistance. At the same time, funds were directed toward increasing shelter space. While we know that homelessness must be addressed at both ends of the spectrum, candidates, as mayor, how do you propose to balance for funding for rent assistance with the need for emergency services like shelters and as an option. And as a follow-up, do you plan to follow the recommendations of a Home for Everyone on programs and budgets? We will start with Ben Vincent.
Okay, so basically, when we look at the investments that we need to make to solve an issue that has been going on for a very long time, we're going to need to generate large amounts of revenue to do that. I see that as a necessary need to loan against our future. I think that we need to make that long-term investment through a public banking option. That's why I support a public bank for Portland, so that we can get access to the revenue that we need now, so that we can solve the root issues of our problems, rather than just putting up shelters or just putting up emergency services for people. We need to have clear paths from homelessness to permanent housing, and those clear paths need to be insured by the city for not just the next 4 years or the next 10 years. They need to be insured by our city for the indefinite future. Can you give me the other half of that again?
Sure. As a follow-up, do you plan to follow the recommendations of a Home for Everyone on programs and budgets?
I'm not familiar with that specific plan, so I don't know.
Thank you. We'll hear next from Deborah Harris.
First of all, having increase. First of all, one of the resolutions would be having an increase in housing production. And everyone is saying, well, where are we going to create more housing from, and where are we going to get the fundings from? Before you know where to build houses, you need to know where the spaces are. The first thing I would do would be to have an analysis done on the city that shows where every location, every empty space is. And in the midst of doing that, because this has elevated to prices, I will look into fundings, and even as far as federal fundings, I know we are allocated, states are allocated, and cities are allocated funds for emergencies. But I would have someone with the excellent skills. I would oversee it, not necessarily oversee it, but involved in it, to see what type of programs, additional programs, we're familiar with the ones currently in place, to see what programs we can use federally funded to build these homes. And it will be specifically for those who are without. And we want to make sure that whoever builds the homes, put them together, is done locally. And we're using local contractors, and we're getting the people involved, and we're getting the communities involved. With the 95 neighborhoods, one of my proposals is to have a single-member district. That way, in a single-member district, there are 7 districts, 95 cities. Within that single-member district, that representative is a reflection of those communities. And when there is a critical situation going on in that community, you go to the representative, and then the representative would come to me. Right now, with commissioners and so forth, the mayor doesn't have as much of a voice as she should, and the future mayor should.
We will hear next from Jesse Sponger.
Fantastic. So I'm really active and engaged with the Houseless community in Portland. It's a very serious thing. It's very close to my heart. I've slept on the sidewalk in front of City Hall. I got all my buddies here to sleep at Hazelnut Grove and the rat-infested mud holes with us. So it's really close to my heart. But my frustration arises with the poverty pimps. And I know, my sister Teresa right there, and I talk about this all the time. We need audits on all these cozy relationships, man. Because let me tell you something. If you're a cancer doctor and you solve cancer, what do you have to do? You gotta go find another job. If you're a homeless advocate and you cure homelessness, what do? You have to go find another job. So while I don't think that programs like Hazelnut Grove are the best way, we can upgrade those and put this transitional housing into dormitory style areas. There's no reason that 75 different households all need their own unique living rooms or their own unique workspaces. We could take these city lots and very cheaply, and when I say cheaply, I'm telling you that if you gave me $30 million to dump at homelessness, I would put every homeless person in a Holiday Inn. This is an irresponsible use of our money. But the most important thing is, everybody wants to focus more on shelter beds. We don't need more shelter beds. Nobody's getting a job by living in a shelter. Nobody's getting a job by being kicked out of their sleeping arrangement at 7 o'clock in the morning, okay? Shelters are designed so that you don't get eaten by lions. And if that's the case, nobody's been eaten by lions, I guess the shelters are working great. But other than that, we need transitional housing, somewhere you can get a good night's sleep, somewhere you can put a tie on, somewhere you can look in the mirror, go get a job. Those people need to be moving up, and then at the very top of it, we need to take our 700 vacant foreclosed houses back from the bank and create a little bit of space. Because if you look at Zillow right now, there are 700 vacant long-term generational homes that are not for sale. Thank you.
We'll now hear from Ted Wheeler.
Thank you, and it's a great question. First of all, you asked about budgets. Let's talk about the things that can be done without spending money. First of all, we can put into place a no-cause eviction process, similar to what they have in Seattle. My tenant bill of rights outlines that. You can link to it on tedwheeler.com and look at what they did in Seattle. That is a huge improvement over what we have here, which is a no-cause eviction process. Second of all, we can look at the zoning that exists in the city of Portland that makes it very difficult to create different kinds of affordable and low-cost housing units, whether it's garden apartments, whether it's taking some of these big houses that are at risk of demolition and turning them into duplexes or fourplexes. We could review our design review process, which adds time and cost to the cost of workforce and affordable housing. As Jesse rightly pointed out, the zombie homes, and I'm glad the city of Portland has stepped up and decided to be more aggressive about that. I do support a home for everyone in their solution. It's permanent, stable, affordable housing with wraparound services to keep people in housing. I think that's important. Getting to the question of funding, that's the tough one, right? Number one, the city's chief financial officer noted that there are $40 million in uncollected taxes. Now, we can't collect all of it. Some of it is not going to be collectible, but the easiest tax money to collect is that which is already owed, and I believe we need to step up our revenue collections because that's the first money that's already been laid claim to. Second of all, the Welcome Home Coalition is in the process of evaluating with Multnomah County, with the City of Portland, with their other nonprofit partners, the idea of a revenue source dedicated to permanent and affordable housing. In other words, to support a home for everyone's coalition goals. And I would be supportive of that.
We will now hear from Sean Davis.
You know, I would love to see a bureau in our city that it has the goals of ending homelessness, increasing the availability of rental housing, and promoting stable home ownership. We already have that. It's called the Portland Bureau of Housing. Right now, if you look at our budget, last year's budget is about $3.8 billion. The Portland Bureau of Housing got about 2.6% of that. And if we all agree that this is the biggest problem that we have in our society, how come we're spending so little on it? Inside that bureau, there's different teams. They have the homeowners access and retention team. They're doing some great things. They've kept 12,000 families from losing their houses last year. We have programs where if you want to buy a house, you go and do some counseling, and they'll even give you matching funds to save up for a deposit. We need to promote things like that. I mean, I know about the budget, and well, I do want to talk about a home for everyone, what Jesse was talking about as well. A home for everyone is a 10-year plan that we've reset 3 times. We're in a housing crisis. So while I know that it does some great things, if you look at it, it's an umbrella for a bunch of different nonprofit organizations. And if you look at their taxes, which I have, 3 to 5 people in every one of those organizations are making six-figure salaries, $125,000 to even up to $200,000 a year. This has become a homeless industrial complex. We have to stop that. We have to prioritize the money. If we already have a bureau that's doing that, why are we putting it out to a third party? Why don't we let us do it as a city? And that's what we need to do.
Jules Bailey.
You asked specifically about homelessness, and homelessness is a big reason why I'm running for mayor and why I've served in public office and what I've spent my time on in Multnomah County. Do I support what the Home for Everyone Committee has recommended? Absolutely. I'm part of the committee and I helped craft those recommendations, so I darn well hope that I support them. And I think the Home for Everyone process is a really important coordinating function for how we address our homeless crisis. They're open to public meetings. I'd invite any of the candidates to come down to them. I spent 2 hours there on Wednesday at our Home for Everyone meeting. In addition to that, though, Multnomah County just a few weeks ago put more money from the lawsuit settlement we got around MERS into rent assistance and opening additional shelter. We need more rent assistance. Having a stable home is what resolves homelessness. Shelter is a respite and a pipeline into that, but homelessness is resolved by housing. And so we need to ensure that we have a stable stock of affordable housing, especially at the 0 to 30% median family income range for people that are moving in, and supportive housing. I support what the Welcome Home Coalition has proposed, and I think that we need to ensure that we have adequate and stable revenue for affordable housing. But we also need to invest in temporary emergency shelter, and we have over 650 new beds of shelter coming online as a pipeline into that housing. And so it's about addressing the immediate need on homelessness with a pipeline into mental health and addiction services, and then into the long-term solution of housing. And finally, I want to be clear that it's going to require partnership between a number of organizations to get this done. And that's really at the core of the Home for Everyone process. It's finally having the left hand and the right hand coordinating on a unified approach so that the federal government, the city, the county, faith providers, the business community, the nonprofit sector are all together working on a shared approach to address the homeless crisis. I've been endorsed in this race by Chair Deborah Kafori. I would love to be a mayor working across the river from her, hand in glove, so that we have a coordinated, shared, and tactical response on how we finally solve the homeless crisis in Portland. Thank you.
Sarah Iannarone.
There's a lot of political speak right now, but there are actually some elected officials in this city who could stop the people tipping into homelessness today if they wanted to. The emergency rent control measures, which Multnomah County can. So let's be clear. We need politicians who stand behind what they say with their actions every single day. This is something that we need to expect and we need to demand. That said, I am running for office because my background is in city planning. When they say we're going to need to rethink how we do zoning, I understand that. I redid the zoning for the comprehensive plan just now. I know where we can play. I know where we've got wiggle room, where we can come up with those surplus lands so that we can have intentional communities, community-based solutions that on order of magnitude, the impacts are so much greater than even the cost of a shelter bed. It's not even a one-to-one ratio there. And what I hear from people who are sleeping out of doors, whether it's the folks that Right to Dream 2, Hazelnut Grove, or people encamped in tents together, is that they need stability regardless the infrastructure around them. So we need to build pathways out of houselessness for our fellow Portlanders, and we need to work on that together. It's all hands on deck for this, no stone left unturned. Yes, are there going to be top-down governmental solutions we need? Yes, and what we should be investing in as a city are these transitional projects where we're getting people the mental health services, the lifeline stability, the life prospect stability that they need to be moving increasingly out of houselessness and into permanent housing. That's where I think we should be putting our dollars. We should not be taking money from rent assistance into shelters. I am not for that. The balance should be toward rent assistance and toward stability and not investing in perpetuating instability. We also need to think about what does it mean for us to be a just and equitable society. Focusing on people who are living out of doors right now as our most vulnerable neighbors is key. And I'll continue later, but yeah, that's my track.
Question number 2. Next question is about closing the gap for extremely low income households, those earning 0 to 30% of median family income, or also known as MFI. Currently, Portland Housing Bureau's portfolio includes 2,112 units serving households earning up to 30% MFI, out of a total of 13,197 units. This is just 16% of the city's portfolio, yet well over 60% of the households served by the PHB portfolio are in this income range, and we know there is a huge shortfall of housing in the private market. How specifically will you close this gap and better align publicly funded housing with the biggest need at 0 to 30% MFI? We'll start with Sean Davis.
Well, I think first thing we have to do is redefine what we talk about. We talk about affordable housing. You know, the inclusionary zoning is passed. We're saying in order to be qualified for that, you have to make 80% of MFI. That's median family income. And median family income for Portland, a family of 4 is $7,500. you take that number and you take 1/3 of that, about 30%, which that's what they say you should be spending on rent, and then you divide that by 12, you're still paying about market price for a one-bedroom apartment in the city of Portland. And you get a family of four is not going to live in there. We have to make sure that we redefine it. It has to go, because what the median family income right now is, if we just say that's what the average person is making, that's way above what most of us are making still. I mean, it's skewed by people with a lot of money. The people that I know, the people that I see on my streets with $200 increases and $500 increases, they can't afford all that stuff. So we have to pay more attention to them, and it goes back to giving community voices. You know, going to neighborhood associations and talking to them. How directly would I do it? I like what they're doing at the Lynch Town Center. It's an urban renewal project out there. They're putting in 127 low affordable housing units. It goes back to putting the priority on the people who need it the most. Because truly, I've lived my life by this. How you treat people in need reveals your true character. And we have to think like that as a city.
Ben Vincent?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Sean's right about, you know, the identification has to come from the communities, and we have to find a way to make city government more like Portland. I think that that's the key to this. If we want to get to a high level for a specific issue, right now what we have is elected officials who are so far from what Portlanders experience that Portlanders, I think, on a whole, feel like they can't approach their government when they have an issue without it being an emergency. And we need to really change the mentality of City Hall and make it invitational so that someone who is making 30% of the median income feels extremely comfortable walking in and talking to their city council people. I think that we need to change that entire culture, specifically of how to deal with that issue, and I want to address it directly. I think that we should have our city auditors do an audit on that and come up with who's making what and how is it affecting their housing, and then direct all of the assets that we're putting towards affordable housing directly to those that are in most need, period. It shouldn't have to do with comparative numbers that are compared to those that don't have a need. It should only be if those that do have a need and those who have the most need get the first access to what we have. If we have a limited housing stock, then we do need to be beholden to those that have the most need to that limited stock, and that's what I would fight for.
Jules Bailey.
Closing the gap in 0 to 30% median family income affordable housing is one of the most important strategies that we need. When I was in the legislature, I chaired the committee that helped extend the affordable housing tax credit. While that's an extremely effective model for the kind of housing that it builds, it often results in housing that's built at more than 60 to 80% of median family income. We need additional money to be able to close that gap for the 0 to 30%. I already mentioned the work that the Welcome Home Coalition is doing. I support that. I think we need a dedicated revenue stream, potentially a large general obligation bond that exceeds what San Francisco did to help bridge the funding to have more 0 to 30% funding. We also need to increase other strategies as well. The federal government needs to be a better partner in funding housing, and we need a mayor who's going to be able to work with our federal partners in the HUD for additional revenue streams. And finally, there's opportunities around things like Medicaid. With Medicaid expansion, we have an opportunity now to start putting Medicaid dollars into building housing, especially supportive housing, because research is showing that obviously when somebody has a roof over their head when they have supportive housing, they're much more likely to not need as many healthcare services down the road. And so there's an opportunity using Medicaid funding with a mayor who's working directly with the federal government and congressional delegation to put that into the stream. There's not going to be one single answer to getting more 0 to 30% affordable housing out there, but we need to package these solutions together, and we need to start preserving the land capacity to be able to develop this kind of housing. Obviously, we're at the top of the market right now. It's not a great time to buy, but better than starting yesterday is starting today. And that means that we need to start land banking some of those parcels so we have the availability to get subsidized housing throughout the city of Portland.
Schumberger.
Okay, guys, I have to repeat this. I'm not a policy guy, so actually closing the gap on the affordable housing is kind of a hard question for me. But you know what's an easy question? Is to tell when somebody's so insincere that it makes you uncomfortable to sit at the table with them. Jules, if you really gave a crap about homelessness or affordable housing, you would be throwing away your position in city council for a mayor's seat, or a county council for a mayor's seat where you're only polling at 8%. So that means you're just abandoning all these people. I sat with these wonderful people from the Portland Tenants Alliance yesterday, and I watched these old women and these sad people come up and they cried to you. And I sat in the audience and my eyes welled up with tears thinking how humiliating it must be for these people to come and prostrate themselves before you. You never once apologized. You never once put your hand to your heart. You never once looked down with any shame. But you're going to sit up here and wink at me and let all these people waste all their time like you really care. Why are you even on county council?
We're gonna have
you need
to
to drop out of this race, Jules.
We're
This is a
gonna-
mockery, this is a charade, and you should drop out right now.
You should drop out right now.
So,
Had to say it.
because of that, we will have to take you out of the debate from this point forward, because we did ask that no personal attacks happen in this particular debate forum. So thank you for your participation thus far.
Okay. I'm not going to respect the Unitarian Church, so. Come on, man. Come on. The word is there. Come on.
All right. Ted Wheeler?
Hate to fall for that. Again, I want to appreciate everybody for being here on a Friday afternoon. This is probably the hardest question, and there are no easy solutions, but here's some pieces of what I think could be cobbled into a solution, and some of the comments that all these guys have made make a lot of sense. First of all, what are the opportunities that are not exploited? Jesse mentioned the zombie homes. That's clearly an opportunity. Second of all, there's something like 585 partial lots in this community that are designated as not buildable. I think there might be a way for us to work with the Welcome Home Coalition and other providers in the community to talk about a creative use of that, so the land isn't just going fallow and not being used for productive housing purpose. Obviously, we now have inclusionary zoning, so we can work with the people who actually build housing. We now have a strengthened hand in demanding that there be more affordable housing for those under 30% MFI. Rent assistance has certainly been mentioned, partnerships. We've already got good organizations in this community that work in that space. Habitat for Humanity is an organization I've enjoyed working with for a number of years. Proud Ground, which is essentially our community housing trust. Jules did say something important, and I want to say it again, which is we missed an opportunity. When there was a recession and people couldn't give away land, we as government entities should have been thinking long-term about the need for that land down the road. Other communities did, and they land banked land at the low in the market, when, by the way, interest rates were very low. Let's not miss that opportunity again, and let's start with areas where we know people are going, seeking housing affordability, and let's throw down an anchor for them now so we are not uprooted and moved farther away. We can do those things, but we have to have an eye to the long term instead of just always thinking about the immediate.
Sarah Iannaro?
It's warm and Portlanders get a little edgy when we have our first heat wave, I think. But I think the tensions and the emotions around this indicate the immediacy of our action and what the role that government must play here now. I want to be clear that we have to distinguish the difference between that missing middle and affordable housing, which is subsidized, and 0 to 30 MFI, which is what you asked me about, which is public housing. That's public housing. It's a term we don't like to use in the States because it's socialist. And what we're saying is that we care enough as a community to invest in housing to ensure that our people here have access to homes. The city of Vienna was able to essentially eliminate homelessness through intensive investments in public housing. How are we as a city, if we believe in this, going to fund it? That's what these dedicated revenue streams are about. How do we come up with the money to fund public housing? And in fact, be proud that as a city, we have an abundance of it, right? That's the Portland way, is together, we come together in these community solutions to support other Portlanders. There are things that we can do, but we actually can't begin to do that until we have a clear sense of how much we need. We do not have a citywide housing plan. We don't know how much supply we need at the 0 to 30 level. We don't know how much we need from 30 to 80. We don't know how much we need from 80 to 120. But I can tell you one thing. Do you know where the majority of development in the city is going? 300% MFI and above. Right now. You go to the planning board and they will tell you that. So what I can say is this. We have plenty of supply being built from which we can capture value through all sorts of charges. Impact fees, carbon impact fees, scaled impact fees, in lieu of fees. Every single fee, especially in this luxury housing, capture that value and invest it directly in public housing with a clear pass-through. And I know how to do that. I have the skills.
Deborah Harris.
I guess, well, I commend Sarah on her comments. Unfortunately, I haven't had an opportunity to work directly with the mayor. So I haven't had the opportunity to work directly with our current mayor, which Sarah has that opportunity, and I think that's awesome.
Actually, I work with the mayor's wife.
With the mayor's wife, yes, because that bond, that's awesome. But basically, what I'm going to do is basically speak from the heart. In government, we first need to build relationships. When we have commissioners and mayors and so forth in our government, and they cannot get along, they cannot come to common grounds, and there's disparity there, how are they going to be able to focus on the issues? Are they concerned right now about is food on the table? Those are the things we need to look at. We need to listen to the community. We need to have the people, like the community, talk to us. How many mayors and commissions have gone out into the 95 neighborhoods and talked and say, what's on your mind? Right now, we're talking about what the median house expense is. That's inaccurate, because when census are done, they are skewed. When we get census reports in, who usually responds to the surveys? The affluent, because you have the time. When you're trying to figure out where you're going to sleep from one night to the next night, when you're trying to figure out how you're going to get food on your table for your kids to eat, are you going to take time and say, oh, let me fill this survey out and send it back in? So we need to be more informative, inform the community what's going on. We need to show them these programs. We need to have community personnel, staff to work with the communities, because everyone doesn't know what we know. Everyone doesn't know what government knows. So we need to involve the communities and let them know what's available. We need to redo the census, and then you'll see that a lot of people are excluded.
We're going to move to the lightning round. This is a series of 10 questions for which we simply want a yes or no answer. Make no mistake, we recognize that these are complex issues, but as a community, we need to know clearly and unequivocally where candidates stand on some key principles and policies. Therefore, we will respectfully limit you to a simple yes or no answer. We'll ask each candidate all 10 questions and then move, we changed this a little bit. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask one question, and then each candidate is going to go down the line and answer with a yes or no, and then we'll move on to the next question. Okay? All right. Question number 1, and we'll start with Sarah and then move this way. As mayor, would you support a just cause eviction ordinance, which would limit a landlord's ability to evict a tenant without cause?
Yes.
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 Hell yeah.
Yes.
Question number 2. Do you support a ballot measure in November to dedicate revenue to building affordable housing? Sarah?
Can you define affordable, please?
I I'm limited by the constraints given to me. I have to ask the question as is. Do you support a ballot measure in November to dedicate revenue to build affordable housing?
Yes.
In principle, yes, I would. I want to see the ballot measure before I give my. Yes.
Oh, true affordable, yes.
Yes. Still Ben's answer. Hell yes.
Question number 3. Do you support tent cities? Sarah?
Define tent city? No, just kidding. As a stopgap measure, yes.
I'll accept that as a stopgap measure, yes, but not as a long-term solution.
Yes, for the moment.
What they said.
I'll pile on.
Do you support sit/lie laws?
I'm not going to swear in church, but no.
Hell no.
Number 5, do you support requiring fair housing training for all landlords and housing providers?
I support fair housing policy, yes.
Well, no, it's restricted to a yes or no.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes.
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 Question number 6, starting to get dicey.
Can you start the other end this time?
Sure. All right, for the remainder of the questions, we'll go the opposite way.
Start in the middle.
Jules, don't flake on me now. Okay, number 6. Do you support mandatory licensing for all landlords and housing providers?
Yeah.
Duh, yes.
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 Number 7. Do you support mandatory inspections of rental units in order to ensure enforcement of laws and local housing codes around safety, health, and habitability?
Yes.
Put that in the, yes.
Y-E-S.
Yes.
Yes.
Number 8, in order to address the negative impacts that Airbnb, VRBO, and others have on our housing market, would you support the city enacting additional enforcement and penalties through Portland's short-term rental housing code?
For violators of the code, yes.
Yes to all of it.
Yes.
Let's start with enforcing the ones we've got, but if that's not going to work, then yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number 9, do you personally support mandatory inclusionary zoning as one tool to increase housing opportunities?
Yes.
Yes, and I was the first to propose it in this race.
Yes.
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 Number 10, the statewide ban on mandatory inclusionary zoning was lifted just last month by the legislature. Now, or 2 months ago. March. It's the beginning of April, I'm confused. Okay, now, given the current market and development, we need a Portland IZ ordinance implemented as quickly as possible. If a mandatory inclusionary zoning ordinance is not yet in place by the time you take office, do you commit to enacting one within the first 3 months?
Yes. You said enact, and I'll need 2 more votes, but yes.
You got 2 votes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Let's give them a hand. I'm going to random order candidates answering. Many communities of color, immigrants and refugees, Black, continue to suffer the legacy of historic discrimination, the criminal justice system, exclusion, dispossession, and forced displacement. In addition, today's rental application screening practices, as we have just seen through HUD's new guidance that was released, such as a credit score and criminal history, have a disparate impact on people of color and other protected classes. Landlords often pick their favorite from a pool of applicants rather than accepting the first qualified application. So how specifically would your housing solutions and policies as mayor address these ongoing disparities to ensure that these communities have equitable access to quality housing? We'll start with Deborah Harris.
Well, first of all, we make sure there are policies that are in place and we have trained and provided the information to the landlords and so forth. Also, we need to make sure that we have our staff monitoring and then make those who are requesting housing, requesting rental, when they are turned down, they will have someone specifically to go to so we can review what these issues are. It's about changing traditions. You know, year after year, we've seen these where people of color have been discriminated because of the tradition. It's been going on for so long, and so it's been accepted. So this is why it would be very important to have a single member district, because you have a representative. Those in that particular neighborhood that's served by that district representative would be able to go and say, well, this is what happened. I was turned out, this is what happened. The representative can compile the number of complaints that has taken place, and then those can be addressed. This would be a way to monitor what's going on and make those changes. Sometimes when people are so accustomed to be turned down and put to the side and just let it go. But when you have a representative for each of the 7 districts, those neighborhoods, a person who is a reflection of those neighborhoods, this is a way to monitor who's doing what, and when you see a pattern there, then we can follow suit. You have to have some documentation, and this would be a great way of having documentation to see what's going on, and then to address those issues, and then to make changes. And we can't just have anyone representing anyone getting the information. We have to make sure it's someone who's ethical and who's going to do what's right, and having people of color.
Thank you. Ben Dixon?
Yeah, so it's about accountability. And I think that one of the things that you had asked in that lightning round addresses that accountability through licensing those that provide housing to people. I would have that be a part of how we license, and it would basically, when you license, you make a commitment to uphold those standards, and the first qualified applicant gets a place. That should be a standard of that licensing, and through the Bureau that we enforce the licensing, we can enforce the practice. I think that that's the specific way that it can work through a government, is to have that bureau have the power to do that, and that's a part of what I would do, is to empower bureaus that empower people. As far as the issue of needing to get that housing, I think there's a root problem here, which is that people are getting uprooted in the first place, and that's why I would support a moratorium on no-cause evictions until we get to 10% vacancy in Portland. I think that it's important that we take it seriously and that we take the actions that we can take right now so that we protect people from being in that situation in the first place. And I think that that goes back to all of the policy that I've presented, is about getting away from a Band-Aid system and getting to a rehab system. We have a lot of really deep issues, and I'm hearing a lot of answers that sound cool on the surface, but don't really tackle the big problem, which is that right now in Portland, we're seeing a future unfold that is benefiting the wrong people. It's not benefiting the communities that have made Portland the destination that it is, and that's why I'm running for mayor, is to give a voice to those people.
Sarah Ayala?
Yeah, well, starting from the least affluent on up, I think the first place we have to think about is removing discriminatory barriers in screening, right? What does that mean, going beyond like the tenants' bill of rights that Mr. Wheeler proposed, to actually have accountability with real teeth so that people have housing justice and housing fairness there? How do we ensure that a landlord is actually renting to the first qualified applicant and not picking the double income, no kids couple over the African-American mom, single mom with 3 kids? Like, we have to have real policies in place to make sure there's accountability there and consequences. We need to think about rental protection, but we also need to think about an adequate supply of affordable housing in affordable neighborhoods. It's not just making sure that every time we're building a luxury neighborhood, someone buys, they put in a bunch of condos, we're gonna make sure that we've got a number of units set aside or people are paying in lieu of fees so that they're buying out of their affordable housing obligation, but that we're actually investing in neighborhoods and communities that have a mix of people with a mix of incomes there so that we can sustain people living at a mix of incomes on what's offered there. Not everyone can afford to shop at Whole Foods. That's why it's important to have a mix even of grocery outlets, right? Retail outlets that serve people across the income spectrum. We can't just plop down affordable units in unaffordable neighborhoods. So that's why transit access and transit equity is key in the affordability equation. You can't just pull out housing out of the affordability ecosystem in Portland. That means complete connected neighborhoods from edge to edge in this city are going to be key. We need to make sure that we're continuing to build them out. And finally, at the upper ends of the income spectrum, let's make sure that we have clear pathways to home ownership. What are we doing to ensure families are moving into that realm of wealth creation? What policies and programs do we have in place to ensure first-time home buyers have access? How do we invest in things like community land banks and land trusts so it makes the cost of housing buying your first home more affordable? So I take a look at those 3 levels.
Jules Bailey.
First off, we have to enforce the laws that are on the books. And we have discrimination in the housing markets happening right now, even under existing laws. I've heard many stories of people who have had to, been asked to submit letters and photos, just like is happening in the real estate market, in the rental market. Well, guess what's happening? People are reading through letters and photos, and they're discriminating based on where they're getting letters and photos from. We need to make sure that that's enforced. And we have an Oregon Liquor Control Commission that does sting operations and enforcements for kids buying alcohol under 21. Why can't we have consistent enforcement and sting operations for landlords that are violating the law? We need to make sure that we are holding people to the law. Second, we need to strengthen the laws that we have on the books. When I was in the state legislature, I was part of the legislative body that worked with Speaker Kotek on strengthening laws around discrimination in Section 8 voucher. But we also need to ensure that in the application process, that we are working with the state legislature and with federal partners around that application form. So having people being forced to report their credit scores at the very beginning of an application process and criminal history and those sorts of things is very similar to the reasons why we passed ban the box, right? It's excluding people before they even get in the door, and it's not fair. So we need to ensure that we have strong laws on the books and that we're enforcing those laws, because fundamentally, having housing is a right, and it should be open and equitable to everybody. My mom teaches English as a second language to adult basic education learners and refugees and immigrants. The folks that are in her classroom, that are getting a start in their life, that are trying to find a place to live, they need the exact same access to housing that my wife and I have.
Ted Wheeler.
So we had talked in the lightning round about licensure for landlords. And the opportunity around licensure, let's first admit, we don't want to lose small mom and pop landlords, so we want to be realistic. But the great opportunity around licensure is to give landlords information and let them understand what their responsibilities are as landlords. And of course, we can do more to help tenants understand what their rights are and their responsibilities as well. We do not have a robust either investigative or enforcement mechanism in this community. In fact, if you go back and look at some of the fair housing audits that have been done in the past in the city of Portland, they're infrequently funded, infrequently done, and when they are done, they show miserable results. We had a young woman come in who was working with our group on the Tenant Bill of Rights. She is a young professional African-American woman. She has children, and she has been denied time and time and time access to housing. So it is also important that we have, not only with that clarification of responsibilities around licensure, but we also need to have a robust enforcement mechanism. And it's already been mentioned what that is. You send people in who are effectively decoys. and you send them in with the same resumes, one person who is African American or Latino, somebody else who is white, you send them in, they say exactly the same story in exactly the same way, and then you see what happens. And if there are patterns of discrimination, they're very easy to identify. And if you've gone to a licensure model, then you actually have some heft. You have something that you can take away. But then we have to be realistic about what the flip side is. You may have just lost a small landlord. So I always err first on the side of give a lot of information, a lot of education to people about what their responsibilities are as landlords.